What's up guys? Today we're going to look at 5 VS Code extensions that is going to make you look like a ninja. Let's get right into it. Before we begin, I just want to say the extensions that we are going to look today are only my recommendations based on the project that I'm working on. You're open to try any extensions you want based on the project that you're working on. Now, I'd also like to show 2 extensions that I authored myself and published in the marketplace at the end of the video. At number 5, we are going to look at auto rename tag. Auto rename tag lets you rename paired HTML and XML tags. It also works in JSX. Imagine you have a markup like this. Now you've decided to rename this div to a header. Now, VS Code already shows some diagnostic to help you identify the error. Although, auto rename tag will automatically do this for you when you try to rename any markup. Let's check that. There you go. Auto rename tag is a great extension. It's got like 13 million downloads. And if you're working on JSX or HTML projects, you need to have this extension. Next, we have TailwindCSS Intellisense. TailwindCSS Intellisense is a great extension for Tailwind-based projects. All you need is a Tailwind config file and the extension will work out of the box. Once you have the extension installed, you'll get some nice features such as autocomplete for your Tailwind classes, hover information on any Tailwind class, color hints for your classes, and also it will work for any custom classes that you create. The extension will also work when you customize some of the pre-built classes. For instance, if I give a margin 1 for this div here, as you can see, it defaults to 0.25 rem. Now if I go to my Tailwind config and change that variable, it'll automatically change across all the places. Tailwind CSS extension is a much needed extension for big Tailwind projects. It also works with a popular TypeScript plus Tailwind library called Class Variance Authority. I'll add the link to the library in the description right below. Next we have Jest. Jest extension lets you run your test cases inside VS Code. Once you install the extension, you can run any test suites by using the icon that appears on the gutter. Or you can also use the Explorer on your right and run any test you want. When a certain test case fails, you'll get useful information on the test that is broken. So when you hover onto the line where the test broke, you'll get useful information on why the test has failed. You can also identify failing test cases by using the red icon on the gutter. And also you can identify the failing test cases using the Text Explorer on your right. The Explorer panel on your right will help you navigate across different test cases quite easily. For instance, you can show only the failing test cases, or you can show only the executed test cases. If you want to focus only on the active file, you can use the show in active file only filter to just look at all the active file test cases. You can jump to any test case by using the Go to Test button that is available in the Explorer. This extension also lets you debug your test cases. To start a debugging session, first you need to add a breakpoint to the line where you want to start the debugger, and you can either use the Explorer button on the right or right click on the test that you want to debug and click the debug test button. This will start the VS Code debugger session and will break at this point where you added the breakpoint. You can use the VS Code debugger now to navigate around your test case and find out the errors in your test case. This extension also provides some useful commands that you can run in your VS Code command palette. To be able to do that, you can open the command palette and type in Jest. For instance, if I want to run all the test cases in my project, I can use just run all tests. Similarly, if I want to stop all the runners that are currently running, I can use just stop all runners to stop all the test cases. So in reality, you would have more number of test cases and test files in your project. So if you are working with Jest, this is a must needed extension. Next on the list, we have Debug Visualiser. Debug Visualiser lets you visualize your runtime debug expressions. So I have a debug session open that is running a small program called array. It defines an array and it tries to mutate and immutate the array in 2 different ways. Now let's use the Debug Visualiser to see how the operations affect the original array. To start debugging your expressions using Debug Visualiser, you can select the expression that you want to debug and run the command debug visualizer use selection as expression. This will open the debug visualizer in a new window with the expression that you chose pre-filled in the text box. Now, as you move along in your program, the debug visualizer will start to kick in with some extractor methods available on certain data structures. Since we have an array as an example, the array methods available are plotly as values, array as grid, toString, and object graph. Now we are interested in array as grid to visually see how our mutate and immutate operations are being performed on the array. My mutate function is mutating the array by deleting the element at index 3. Let's see how Debug Visualizer helps us to analyze that. As I step over, you can already see that my array got modified and the element at index 3, which was originally 4, got removed and it was replaced by 5. Now my immutate function does not modify the array. So as I step over the immutate function, you can see that the array was never affected. You can also use Debug Visualizer to identify some problems with your complex data structures such as linked list. I have a small linked list program here that contains 4 nodes. Now there is a problem with this linked list where it has a cyclic dependency. Now let's see how we can use Debug Visualizer to identify that problem. I have selected head as the expression to visualize. I've used the object graph as an extractor and vsJS as the visualizer. Now as I move along in my program, you can see that the visualizer is updating the nodes according to the changes that I'm making to the linked list. As I keep moving, as soon as I cross the line number 18, I can already see that there is a cycle that is happening at line 18. Now I can go ahead and fix my problem by changing the right order, rerunning the program, and visualizing it again. So now I have a proper linked list that is set up from head to tail. In certain situations, you might want to visualize your data in a tabular format. For instance, when you're debugging some database tables or any other tabular data. You can do that by selecting the expression first and using the extractor as is and using the visualizer as perspective table. Debug Visualizer is a great extension for projects that involves complex data structures and algorithms. Use it at your own will and have fun with it. The last extension we are going to see is Total Typescript. It is from my TypeScript guru Matt Pocock. So this extension lets you learn TypeScript in your VS Code and helps you translate TypeScript errors in a more human readable format. Total Typescript offers 2 things. The one thing that you can do is learn TypeScript in VS Code, and the other thing it can do is interpret TypeScript errors in a more human readable format. I have a user interface here with properties such as first name, last name, and age. I'm using the user interface to set it on the user state here, and I've defined only the first name. Now VS Code is already throwing an error for us saying that first name string is missing the following properties from type user, last name, age. Now there is a lot of information going on here, and for a first time user of TypeScript or a beginner in TypeScript, it's somewhat difficult to decrypt this message. Now after I enable Total TypeScript, I'll get some nice translations here saying that I was expecting user, but you passed only first name string. Now you can also view the translation in the browser and learn more about the error. If you are a beginner in TypeScript, this extension will allow you to learn TypeScript inside your VS Code. For example, if I hover over the user interface here, there is a blue squiggly line here that tells that this is an interface declaration and you can either learn more or mark it as learned. Similarly, when I hover over the string here, it says that these are basic types. You can learn more, and that opens the website, TypeScript or documentation website, or you can just mark this as learned. Now, these were just small examples that I've given. In reality, you will have like complex interfaces and complex types that you have to deal with in your real-time projects. So using this extension will definitely help you solve a lot of TypeScript problems and also make you a better TypeScript programmer. So before we wrap it up, I'd like to show the 2 extensions that I authored myself and published to the VS Code Marketplace. Let's quickly see how these 2 extensions work. The first extension that I'd like to show is React CSS Modules. React CSS Modules is a VS Code extension for CSS module support in TypeScript-based React projects. It also supports less and SESS. It has IntelliSense features such as definitions, hover, completion, diagnostics, and code actions. When you import your styles from any CSS, SESS, or less module, it takes the style object and converts it into a TypeScript interface. Now, Imagine you have the class name here as app-header and you'd like to change it to styles.appheader. You'll get useful intelligence such as autocomplete. You can hover over the class and see all the CSS information, and you can directly go to the definition of that CSS class. This extension also gives you useful diagnostic information for misspelled selectors and also for non-existing selectors. Now I can use vscode quick fix to fix these problems easily. I can add foo to the app module.css and I can change the spelling to app logo. So if you're working on a React project that uses CSS modules, please check out my extension. I hope it solves a lot of problems for you. Now, the next extension that I want to show you guys is React Dev Docs. I published this recently to access React Dev documentation, especially the latest dev documentation inside VS Code. It gives you information about the React hooks, APIs, and the components. So simply hover onto any React API and you get the nice information about that particular API inside VS Code. You can click on any of the available links here and open the documentation website inside your VS Code. You can also open the documentation in your favorite browser. So that was it, guys. Those were the extensions that I use daily to be more productive in VS Code. I've attached the links to the extension in the description right below, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Hit the like button, hit that subscribe button for more of these content. I'll see you next time in a different video.